The night before the biggest mission of the war, the base on Moji was eerily quiet. Lieutenant James "Jimmy" Coulter stood alone at the edge of the airstrip, the damp Pacific breeze tugging at his flight jacket. Behind him, the B-24 Liberator bombers sat in neat rows, their massive forms silver ghosts in the moonlight. They looked powerful, invincible even. But Jimmy knew better. He was a navigator, and he knew exactly how far they had to fly tomorrow, and how much of that journey would be over open ocean with no landmarks, no radio beacons, and enemy fighters waiting at the other end. You'll wear a hole in that leather if you keep pacing. Jimmy turned to see Captain Frank Morrison, his pilot, approaching with 2 tin cups of coffee. Frank was older than most pilots, a former airline captain who traded his comfortable cockpit for the chaos of war. He handed Jimmy a cup. Couldn't sleep, Jimmy admitted, wrapping his hands around the warm metal. Nobody sleeps the night before a big one, Frank said, lighting a cigarette. That's the Army's way of preparing you, keeping you tired, so you're too exhausted to be scared. Jimmy managed a weak smile. Is it working? Nope. Frank took a long drag. Come on. Walk with me. They strolled along the edge of the runway, their footsteps crunching on the crushed coral that paved the island's makeshift roads. In the distance, the jungle loomed dark and impenetrable, alive with the chirps and calls of creatures that didn't care about the war. My boy turned 6 last week, Frank said suddenly, his voice softer now. Sent me a drawing. Crayon scribbles of an airplane. Said it was me, flying home. Jimmy looked at his pilot. Frank was usually all business-sharp commands, quick decisions, the weight of command resting easily on his broad shoulders. But now, in the moonlight, he looked like any other father missing his child. What did you tell him? Jimmy asked. Told him I'd be home before he turned 7. Promised him. Frank stopped walking and turned to face the younger man. That's why we have to get this right tomorrow, Jimmy. Not for the generals. Not for the newspaper headlines. For the 6-year-olds waiting for their dads. The weight of those words settled on Jimmy's chest. He thought of his own father, a farmer in Iowa who'd never been farther than Des Moines. He thought of the letters his mother wrote, always cheerful, always ending with, "Come home soon, Jimmy. The fields miss you." "I'll get us there," Jimmy said quietly. "And I'll get us back." Frank studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I know you will. That's why I asked for you." They walked in silence back toward the Quonset huts, passing groups of men engaged in their own pre-mission rituals. Some played cards by lantern light, their laughter too loud, too forced. Others wrote letters by flashlight, the paper trembling slightly in their hands. A few just sat alone, staring at nothing, their minds already in the sky. Back in his bunk, Jimmy pulled out his own letter unfinished, like so many things in wartime. It was to his younger brother, Tommy, who just turned 14. "Dear Tommy," he read over his own words. "The stars here are different than at home, brighter, somehow. I look at them every night and think about how you're looking at the same sky back in Iowa. Mom says you've been helping with the chores, stepping up like a man. I'm proud of you. Keep taking care of her for me." He wanted to write more. He wanted to tell Tommy about the fear, about the friends he'd lost, about the nights he woke up in a cold sweat, certain he was falling. But you didn't write those things to a 14-year-old. You wrote about stars and pride and coming home. So he simply added, "Tomorrow's a big day. I'll write again soon. Tell Mom I love her. Your brother, Jimmy." He folded the letter, sealed it, and placed it in his breast, pocket right over his heart. It was a superstition among the airmen. If you went down, they'd find that letter, and someone would make sure it got home. The next morning came too fast. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange as the bombers warmed up, their engines coughing to life one by one. Jimmy climbed into the nose of his Liberator, taking his position at the small navigation table surrounded by plexiglass. Below him, the island of Moji shrank as they gained altitude. Frank's voice crackled over the intercom. "All right, gentlemen. Let's go earn our pay. Navigator, you got a heading for me?" Jimmy looked at his charts, at the lines he'd drawn and redrawn 100 times during the night. He thought of Frank's son, drawing airplanes with crayons. He thought of Tommy, looking at the same stars. He thought of the promise he'd made in the moonlight. "Steady as she goes, Captain," Jimmy said, his voice calm and certain. "Heading 270. I'll get you there." The bomber turned toward the rising sun, joining the formation of silver ghosts heading into battle. Behind them, Moji grew small and disappeared into the vast blue ocean. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the hopes of everyone waiting back home. Jimmy touched his breast pocket once, just to feel the letter there, and got to work. A navigator's job was to focus on the map, not the fear. To find the path through empty sky and bring them home. He intended to keep his promise.